All right, you have come to the right room if you are expecting to hear a talk about bibliographies. There is going to be some stuff about bibliographies today, but I sort of changed the focus to be a little more broad. So I'm going to talk about academic websites and Plone in general. So first I'm going to just go through a bunch of reasons why Plone for academic websites, and then I'm going to focus on two beloved academic add-ons towards the end. So why Plone for educational institutions? Well, there's some stuff about Plone Core that's in Plone Core that is very appealing to universities. You've just heard a bunch from Ken, so this is kind of a rehash of some of the things he just said. It's secure, it's accessible, that can be really important for public institutions. It's very scalable in terms of numbers of users, editors, large amounts of pages. User-friendly editing, this in-context editing, any of you who have ever helped some new organization get up to speed with Plone knows that people generally say, oh wow, this is really easy. It's so rewarding when they say that. Very flexible, granular permission system. I stole those words from Nathan this morning. It's a good way to put it, but it's very powerful what we can do with our permission system, and it allows all sorts of scenarios that are useful in universities where this department has edit rights over this portion of the site, and the HR people keep their stuff private, and all those kinds of ideas of portions of the site having certain people with certain roles, and then global roles being very flexible as well. It also has very nice tools available for LDAP or Active Directory integration, which is something that a lot of universities care about. So there's some great things that just come out of the box with Plone. And then I'm going to focus on some sort of semi-add-ons, and the first couple of add-ons are now in Core. It's very, very exciting that the Diazo theming is now in Core. Not only is the theming engine in Core and has been since 4.2, but as of 4.3, we've got through the web Diazo theming that I think you've all seen a bit of. If not, definitely check it out live on 4.3, or check out one of the videos that or screencasts that folks have done. I think this is really, really important for universities, because universities tend to have people who know HTML and CSS and that kind of stuff just hanging around, looking for internship opportunities and stuff. Not so much with the Python developers and the packages and all that stuff. So this through the web theming that's now available with Diazo is fantastic, because it lets you totally through the web change these things without any knowledge of Python, really user-friendly, and able then to download a package that you can then put into your source code repository and all that. So I think this is going to be a really, really key. And I just want to not oversell it. I'm not trying to say that this makes Plone theming totally easy, because with a complicated theme and a complicated sort of mapping that you're going to do, it's going to be tricky, and CSS, responsive CSS, all that stuff is, takes knowledge. But no Python knowledge is required for this, so that's really huge, I think. Another very cool thing that has arrived in Plone 4.3 is through the web dexterity content types. So, and cooking up custom Plone content types for our clients, as any integration shop knows, as any university or other, large organization that has a core team of developers knows, this is one of our bread and butter things, to be able to, give our sites some sort of custom behavior. Obviously, all the built-in types of content are great for all the normal use cases. But for many of our larger institutions, we want to do some specific things. And this has always been pretty easy to do in Plone, and now it's just so much more easy to do with this through the web dexterity content type tool. So you should, again, check that out. It's in Plone 4.3, and it's getting better all the time. Add a little custom workflow, and the plone.app.workflow manager tool, which was started here, right? Didn't Nathan start developing that here, or maybe finished it here? Is a really nice tool, Plone add-on for developing custom workflows, and hook that up to your custom content types, and you've essentially got sort of a business process automation. Not interesting to some organizations, but I gather here, since you guys develop so many of these tools, there are a lot of different groups they've got their form that does this, and they've got their board of directors, which has to approve that, and then it goes through this other approval process, and larger institutions are good at that kind of business process. And so now here's a tool that makes it a lot easier for us integrators to churn these little custom things out for folks who need them. There are also the UWash North Star and PFG.D2C, which I always have trouble saying, other approaches to that. And I think probably these kind of ideas have been behind, part of what's been behind driving the Dexterity folks to finally get this stuff in core and available through the web. So that's really great. Another big selling point, I think, is the idea of subsites. Now we're more in the realm of add-ons rather than core features. But for a lot of educational institutions, they need to manage many sites, be it a K through 12 system with a ton of public schools, or a large university with a lot of different departments, whatever. And that can quickly become a management headache or nightmare once you, go over the 10th or whatever, if you are literally having these all as separate sites. But sorry, excuse me, if I just made a noise with the mic. But there are both add-ons, and it's actually, the architecture of Plone makes it relatively easy to do a little lightweight customization to enable the ability for different folders on your Plone site to behave as independent Plone sites, as if they were independent Plone sites, but while you're still managing all the add-ons and all that stuff as one site. So that is a big win for the teams that are in charge of managing these sites. So most notably, the collective.lineage product. And I recommend that you check out the talk on Notre Dame tomorrow, which is going to talk about that product and give a great example use case for it. There's also the for teamwork. I always have trouble with that. ftw.subsite is another add-on in this space that's, I think, more focused on the multilingual side of things. Sounds a little different. I don't know much about it. But anyway, there's at least two of them. Lineage is certainly very well known and well maintained. And as I say, a lightweight customization. If you'd rather not have some of the extra stuff that Lineage does for you, you can do it quite easily on your own. So that is a good thing about Plone. Another thing that universities are often interested in, even public ones these days, is fundraising. And we have this wonderful Salesforce integration suite that's been available for a long time in Plone. And as you all heard at lunch, that Jason Lantz gave a lightning talk on, there's a whole new set of sort of underlying infrastructure tools currently being developed to replace the somewhat aging SOAP API wrapper, et cetera, set that we have. Not that that stuff doesn't work. It works like a charm. It's really quite easy toolkit to use and to get installed. But now we're looking at some great new approaches being added to the toolkit. And in addition to that, Jason was instrumental in creating a add-on called collective.salesforce.fundraising, and I believe that's what your talk is going to be about tomorrow. Is that right? Yes. So check out Jason's talk tomorrow. The Innocence Project and Jason have created this amazing plugin that is essentially like a all-in-one personal fundraising tool that just runs on Plone. It's really awesome. So see that presentation tomorrow, and I'll also just plug again. We're having a Birds of a Feather to talk about those technologies tonight at dinner at the restaurant. So find either Jason, wave your hand, Jason, or me, or David Glick, because we're all kind of in this together. Jess Carter is actually working on a project now with the Mountaineers that needs this asynchronous message queuing approach to Salesforce integration, just like the Innocence Project does. So we're all collaborating together on this. So pretty exciting new stuff happening in that space. And now on to some of the other things that Plone does or Plone add-ons do that universities care about. Lots of calendaring tools are available. The built-in events and calendar, of course, just come out of the box. It's the Legma full calendar. Name your favorite calendaring add-on. There are a lot of them last I looked. Full calendar pages, the sort of sign-up registration types of products like the UWash time slot one. There's another one called Sign-Up Sheet. So calendaring tools galore that makes university lives easier. There's even work been done on laboratory information management systems in Plone. There's a fairly significant one that I'm not that familiar with, but I'll just mention it in case there are any scientists, lab scientists in the audience. There's this tool, LIMS, which has roles and workflows tailored for labs. So again, an area that Plone has explored. And then one little additional niche product that, or package add-on that we developed over the last 2 years for the Dumbarton Oaks Museum and Research Library in Washington, D.C., or in Georgetown. This idea of online exhibits, being able to turn your Plone content into this cool exhibit sort of thing. So it's like walking through galleries and being able to view zoom, pan and zoom versions of the images that you're looking at. So again, a little extra thing. And then finally, the main thing I want to focus on, there are 2 venerable add-ons that universities over and over again turn to in Plone, and that's Faculty Staff Directory and CMF Bibliography AT. So these are 2 really important add-ons, I feel, for universities that I decided it was time to talk about these here at the symposium. So let's talk about Faculty Staff Directory first. Probably a lot of you already know about it. Kind of personnel directories tailored for educational institutions. It integrates with Plone users and groups using membrane technology. It was created in 2007, came out of Penn State and the WebLion group. The current version, it's up to 3.1.3. It's very widely used among academic institutions, actively maintained product. It is tightly coupled to an academic organizational model. You have these classifications, whether you're a staff person, faculty, or a student, that kind of thing. Then you have these departments, department level organization, and then there's the idea of committees. So perfect match for universities. And all of these kind of objects, the classifications, the departments you create, the committees you create are all archetypes, content type items. So it's got a long history. It's been really honed for use in educational institutions. It's inflexible. It's difficult to adapt it, or one could say almost impossible to adapt it to other types of membership situations. So for example, on a committee, you can't designate who's the chairperson and who are members or co-chairs or anything like that. It's just kind of these groups. But it's cool, it works really well for the basic university scenario that it's solving. Just a little interesting aside here. Again, as part of this same project for the Mountaineers that we're working on, that is David Glick and our other developers, are beginning work on a new membership add-on because the Mountaineers, I don't know if you're from the Northwest, you've heard of the Mountaineers. If you're from the East Coast, you've heard of the Appalachian Mountain Club. It's kind of like, it's a similar type of organization. Tons of members, tons of volunteers, lots of classes and activities and workshops and trail maintenance. And so they've got a lot of members and a lot of committees, branches, a lot of different groups. So they also have a membership kind of a theme running throughout their Plone site, but it works differently than faculty staff. I mean, when I first kind of read about what they needed, it was like, oh, it's sort of like faculty staff directory, but not quite. To address that, David's working on a new open source add-on. The provisional name is Roster because that's what the Mountaineers calls these things. And the idea is to keep membership information separate from the actual object that is the member group, like the committee, say, in the Mountaineers case, or the department in the case of a university. It captures metadata about the user's membership in the group. So, yeah, so we can designate the chairperson, the people with permission to do such and so, different roles within that group. And if you're interested in that, talk to David Glick. He's in the midst of getting excited about it and working on it, so he can tell you more. And so as I said, we'll open source that piece as part of what we do for the Mountaineers. So that's kind of a neat new, it's a fairly low-level little piece of a membership scenario. So let's talk about what is the future of Faculty Staff Directory. It's very feature complete, I think, for the niche it occupies. Tweaks, bug fixes, yes, it's gonna be, maintaining its compatibility with future Plone versions. It gets regular attention and releases as time goes on. But do I see a major dexterity rewrite of it happening anytime soon without some major event happening? I don't see that in like people have talked about it, but it's just a lot of work, and the thing is there and it works beautifully for what it does. So that's not so likely. Like this thing that David is working on is really cool, and it could be a piece of a new thing, but it would be a whole lot of work to rewrite that thing. So keep that thought in mind and hold the discussion on this question until the end, because now we're going to talk about my second venerable tool, which is going to wind up on a similar kind of a page, and then I'd love to open the floor to discussion about that situation. So CMF Bibliography AT. CMF and AT do stand for the things that you think they stand for. So this is a tool to create and manage bibliographic references. It provides 16 different types of references as archetypes, content types, things like article, in proceedings, book, web reference, PhD thesis, 16 of these kinds of things, with all the metadata, separate fields that anyone who has ever written an academic paper and been forced to learn how to properly cite a bibliographic reference, this would all be totally familiar to you. You fill out the number and the page and the volume and all that stuff. It follows BibTeX, which is, if any of you are familiar with the LaTeX, it's a system for managing publications, essentially. It's like a tag-based word processing system that the science community is very fond of using. So they developed this whole big system, and BibTeX, it was the reference management system that was in that, and it just took the BibTeX schema and implemented it, essentially. It supports numerous import and export formats, easy to add new formats. You can do these tricky things like go to the page where you have the references you're interested in and use Zotero to suck up the references, and then use Zotero to export the references as some other RAS format, and then, so through some chain, we've always been able to figure out a way to get random references into this thing. It's very widely used within this niche of academic institutions who use Plone. I mean, it's invaluable. If you're a scientist or a researcher, bibliographic references are just a huge part of what you do. This was created in 2005. It's now at version 1.1.2, so just a comment on different people's ideas of version numbering schemes, but it hasn't changed in 2 years. It is a big, complicated code base. It's big, and it includes a CMF layer. And I just throw this in for any of you who are interested in using this tool or are using this tool, a cautionary note: if you import large numbers of bibliographic references, like thousands and thousands, which we've recently had a couple projects where we've had to import these gigantic bibliographies. If they have keywords or tags, categories, however in the normal place in the bibliographic reference schema, there's a place where you can capture tags, and Plone uses the bibliography items use the same keyword widget that the normal Plone content types, that keyword widget that you do your site tags with. It uses that same widget, and there's a bug in that widget that causes the performance to go, degrade exponentially as the number of tags goes up. So we had a bibliography with about 15,000 tags on it, and it was impossible to edit anything. So we essentially had to totally, that's a bug that should be fixed in the keyword widget, but anyway, we didn't fix that bug. We just found a workaround, but that's a problem. And the second problem is that the normal way to do it is to import all your references into one bibliography folder, but if you've got a nav portlet that's showing the contents of the nav folder and you just import 15,000 things into that folder, you are not going to render that site page in time to, it just doesn't work. So remember to turn off the bibliography reference types from nav on the site setup. So anyway, just a note. So same questions about CMF bibliography. What's the future? It's very feature complete for the niche it occupies. I'm sure it will continue to get occasional tweaks and bug fixes. A dexterity rewrite. If faculty staff directory would be hard, this thing is enormous. And the other thing that worries me, people are talking about removing the CMF layer, which appeals to us all for our inner, clean that code base and make it get rid of all this old cruft. But if that happens, and not to mention if eventually when archetypes are no longer supported, then all those sites that use this tool won't be able to upgrade. So I just thought I'd pose the question: what do we think we should do about this? Does anybody care? So end of my presentation. Opening of conversation. Yes.
Whether it's really feature complete in the sense that there's this new citation style language standard that a lot of people have been using, which is used a lot in order to define which way do we want to format the bibliography. Is this Chicago style or Harvard style or whichever other style? I mean, there's these hundreds of styles out there. And this citation style language defines all those styles. And it's been picked up by Zotero. I think that's where it was developed. And then Drupal has a plugin for this, and various other tools around the scientific reference community are picking this up. Is that supported? Is it likely to ever going to be supported? I would argue that would be a big plus for this if this was available in a Plone world somewhere.
I have no idea because I don't know exactly what you're talking about. I know that Zotero does expect to find embedded, I guess they're CSS classes that are probably used, some kind of CSS meta tagging or HTML meta tagging that's used to identify the different bibliographic fields on a web page so that it can suck up the information, and that is supported.
This is not about importing the stuff, it's about
No, I'm talking about exporting. So a Plone site, so the CMF bibliography items shown on a Plone site can be imported by Zotero. Because it does have that metadata embedded in its HTML.
Okay.
But I'm not sure it's exactly the standard that you're talking about, or whether there's some new extended standard, but I know that it can work with Zotero.
Okay, yeah.
And as far as the formatting of it by the different styles, there are a couple of plugins for doing different there are tons of different styles for actually showing it on the page. And there are a couple of little add-ons that do, one that does Chicago style, I think, and I don't remember the other one. But there are not very many plugins for actually showing it on the Plone page in a specific style. But it would be pretty trivial to write one. I mean, it's just a question of a different view on the item. So kind of limited. Go ahead.
Yes, Sally, there actually was a product that was linked to CMF Bibliography AT. I think it was called AT Bibliotypes, or
right.
something like that. Up until 2 years ago, we used it on our site. And it was really great because you once the data was in there, you chose your type, and it would redisplay the page. You
Oh,
know,
nice.
APA, Chicago, whatever you wanted. So whatever the code was that did that, you know, I'm not a coder, so I didn't know what it was. And when it died and would not migrate to Plone 4, then I had to pretty much just get rid of that part of it. So we still have the bibliography, but we can't restyle the page according to whatever style you want, you know, until I get some more time to do the actual coding.
Right. It's actually, I mean, you should just,
workaround.
we actually, when we, on our recent projects using bibliographies, we had to do a little bit of work to get CMF bibliography itself, to get all the kinks worked out for Plone 4.2 at the time we were using.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that it would not be that strenuous to get that add-on upgraded to,
Yeah.
unless, did somebody tell you otherwise, that it was going to be difficult to upgrade that? Because often
No.
there's just a little something that needs to be done.
No, my feeling, though, is based on the other comment that was just made, is it may be that we need to develop actually in a completely new tool. Yeah.
Okay, so yes, that is an interesting, I mean, it's true, I've talked to folks who've helped, you know, with development of various aspects of CMF bibliography who have said, it could really stand a code cleanup. I mean, 2005 to the present day with the CMF layer still sitting there, you can imagine the code it works, but there has not been a lot of love into totally restructuring it, and that would be great to totally rewrite it according to dexterity. And so it's kind of like a Plone edu question. You know, we talk about these various collaborations that universities could do with Plone EDU. Well, here's a really big potential one, is to have a bunch of groups collaborate in a rewrite of this thing, which is, I'd say, sorely needed, and if we want to continue to use it and have those sites, you know, be able to move forward, it's needed. Not only a rewrite, but also a migration and upgrade step. Just like the new collections were very cool, but we were all sort of bummed that it didn't come with an upgrade step, and then finally, you know, that is now happening.
So Sally, maybe you can answer, so repeat the question back. So why do you think that it would be so hard to re-implement this in dexterity? I'm sorry if I missed what you said.
So Kim was asking why it would be hard to re-implement in dexterity. No particular technical roadblock, just a mountain of code. There are 16 content types. There is a lot of functionality that it does. It's just a big thing. That's all. I don't think there are any particular technical challenges to it. And I wish that somebody, I know developers in the room. I mean, I could find out more from other folks if that's true, but that's my impression. It's just, it's, you know, kind of got the multiple stacks, layers, and it'd have to be all kind of disentangled to figure out what it does and move that into a clean, you know, re-architected package. And it's just, it's big. That's all. Yeah.
Just curious for academic websites, if you had any thoughts, recommendations on things like registration, SIS integration.
So the question was wondering about doing registration and what integration? Student information systems integration. I know nothing about student information systems. Somebody else maybe could answer that. As far as registration, I would recommend looking at the uwash.timeslot pack add-on and also the sign-up sheet add-on. And Kim can talk, and maybe, could you get the mic to Kim so that you could answer more fully on?
I guess I'm curious to know what you mean by integrating it with registration system, or do you mean like a student information system like PeopleSoft? So you mean like PeopleSoft, and in what way are you thinking of integrating?
Just curious what other folks have done in putting courses up so that students can click through that, whether you integrated it into your Plone site.
All right, so the question was whether or not we've put up course listings and anything else? Course listings? At UWash, we've got web services that were developed, a collaboration between the Res Life Management Information Office, the library, and I guess us, who do work with PeopleSoft. And we have a number of web services that we've built that allow our Plone sites to query PeopleSoft data. And we also generate class listings, which we send to this Solar database, which then is queried through some JavaScript wizardry from the library. And so there's a sort of a 3-unit collaboration here where we can present a lot of information that's normally public information that's stored in PeopleSoft, but we've been very careful not to store any confidential information that might get leaked through any sort of security breach. So we've tended to try to leave most of the confidential information inside the PeopleSoft system, where we know we've got a pretty professional team that goes really out of its way to maintain high levels of security around that information. So we do have a number of units on campus, like colleges, who have separate admissions processes that are complementary or, in fact, in some ways, more comprehensive than the admissions process used by the main university. And so in those cases, we've got some, we've got some discussions going on about what exactly they need and where it should go, whether it should remain in PeopleSoft entirely or whether it should be also in Plone. And so there's always the question of long-term support. If we try to push things entirely into PeopleSoft, that's another albatross around the neck of our PeopleSoft programmers.
So can be accomplished with a small matter of integration work, and I assume that none of that work is available as open source packages?
The stuff that we've got is, we would certainly be happy to share it. It's not very complicated. It's Oracle queries and some XML RPC in the front end for the stuff that I've been involved with. And you know, David Hippis from the library, I'm sure, would be willing to talk to you about how to get his information, his code. A lot of his code is just like all of ours, is available in our Subversion repo, so I can share that with you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably it was not such a complicated problem that it required a special add-on package. It's more an accumulation of queries, like you say, and
yeah, it's just
some
queries
special views and stuff.
And I hate to say it in public, external methods. Anybody?
Okay.
External methods?
That's what I was guessing.
Yeah, I'm old school, I guess.
Does that help? Other questions or thoughts? Yes.
Well, just listening to the discussion about where the bibliography stuff is going to go, I'm not going to be involved in it, but I strongly encourage people to think about some kind of collaboration to upgrade it to use dexterity types. So thinking about I've been using EndNote since it was in version 1, long before Plone ever existed. So all of my stuff's still in EndNote.
Which, by the way, you can import from EndNote into this thing.
But, and there's no reason, actually, for the way I use things as a scientist to have my database that I use to keep track of my stuff up on a website. Maybe one thing if I were sharing it with lots of people, but it's not particularly useful to share with people. It's really my file cabinet. Tell people where to find stuff. But if I would encourage people to work on updating this, because the kinds of things that go into any bibliography are simply a list of what essentially would work out to be a list of fields in some kind of a type. And I see no reason why you couldn't make it a dexterity type.
Oh,
any more
absolutely.
Than I can't imagine what else is in there, except that maybe they've got places to load pictures and stuff, and originally that was hard.
No, that's the export. There's export and import code.
Yeah.
There's view templates for the extra package that William mentioned that can format it in a bunch of different styles. That's apparently broken. That would be nice to integrate it with it and have it not be broken. So it's that kind of thing, how it looks, how you get it in, how you get it out, how it looks, and how you search it. The package comes with like a search interface where you can search by title and author and journal and stuff like that. Okay. And but anyway, you're absolutely right. There's no technical barrier to re-implementing this in Dexterity. It's just that it's kind of a big package, and it's not the kind of thing that our sprinters tend to get excited about, going to a pre-Symposium sprint with this you know, it's like this old thing that they'd have to just re-crank out. Go ahead.
I think it would be, from an educational point of view, it would be really cool if something like that existed, because then as a course, if I'm running a course, I can direct students to that site, and we can collect bibliographies together on the site. And
Yeah, exactly. I can show you an example too. So this one is from where, and I can.
I'll just talk into her microphone. This is from the Literary Journalism Studies site, which, I mean, it's obviously still under development. It was a proof of concept to demonstrate that an international society can collaborate on collecting bibliographic references, and it can be done through the web, and it can be shared among anybody. Information from here can be downloaded. And so this is something that we just started putting together, and we impressed, I guess, the 2 faculty members here who liked it so much, and so they've taken it back to their society. So I think they're going to proceed. And with this and Diazo, we've been able, there's another version of this where we've themed it to match exactly the Literary Journalism Studies Society's website. So that's an example where collaborative collection of references is doable.
Can I?
Yeah.
How do I get out of this?
Escape.
That's what I thought I just
Yeah.
used that. Oh, okay. So I just want, here's another one, here's another example. This was that 15,000 tag one that kind of broke the bank. This is on a staging site, it's not live yet. It's still under development. There were so many references that we binned them by, into folders by decade, and then for each decade, actually this is kind of early, so it doesn't have very many, right? So we'll go down to 38 or something and see if we've got one. So sort of okay, I should use a more recent set of years. So we just developed this, automatic import script to take them from. They were exported from RefMan and then into some XML format, and then we just imported that using the existing bibliography tools, and we just put a little layer on it to bin them into bin them into these by year, because there are just tons of them. So that's another one. This is the University of Minnesota Press, whose test division has this hugely important in psychology MMPI test that they do, and they have this bibliography of something like 25,000 things. Here's another one that's on the Dumbarton Oaks site, bibliography on gender issues in Byzantium. So just, themed differently, but same idea.
is it possible to import this from Web of Science, PubMed, or any of these big?
Yeah,
That's supported already.
PubMed, definitely. I don't know about the other one. Yeah? Thank you.
I'm curious, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around the distinction between the Plone-specific logic, which I guess is the UI here to kind of present the bibliography info. Is part of the challenge that basically there's code that could be a generic Python library to parse data and spit out structured data from it?
That
that's
kind
wrapped
of
up in a
generic.
bigger CMF Plone package, or?
No, not so much, because that is essentially in these import-export modules that are very modular and are pretty much Python and are not so much the issue. But there are, like I say, a different content type for each different type of reference, because it has different types of metadata. Like an article has different metadata than a book. So there's just a content type to stuff all that information into. So there are several of them, and plus the views for all 16 of them, and then potentially different views for different styles, which there are a limited number, currently broken, it sounds like, plus the kind of logic for providing some sort of a search interface. And the search interface that comes with it is pretty clunky, and what makes total sense is to convert that to user-faceted navigation, which what we're doing for these things, because those are much nicer looking. Although, it's a lot of references.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I can see how the investment that you've got in this is
well, not me, but the community from 2005 till now, all
Yeah.
the people hours that went into developing this thing.
I mean, I'm just thinking of what you're supporting with the different places, and it makes what I'm doing really look pretty small, but it's still, the thing keeps coming back to me about this and is that we may need to rethink the tool from the bottom up. I mean, not just take the tool we have and migrate it to a dexterity-based system, but actually ask ourselves again what the actual problem is and ask ourselves how we want to solve it, and maybe look around, and there may be things available today that were not around in 2005. You know, it is a long time.
It's true that there is more bibliography sharing through the Zotero tool, and there may be sites for collecting together research, but I don't think that eliminates the need for any given academic person to want to present his or her bibliography of their publications. I mean, this, for example, this integrates with, not integrates, but it's easy to configure this so that your faculty staff directory, every faculty member comes with a bibliography folder in which they can add, and it wouldn't be like your EndNote, you know, your, you know, the things that you're, you know, using for your own personal use to figure out the next thing you're going to work on, but more like for your public face, for your references, or maybe you'd have another bibliography folder to highlight a set of references that you want your students to be aware of in the yada yada class. This kind of thing is what it's built for on any given institution's website, to have these little personal collections. And then it also comes with the feature that, well, since it's a website, now we can gather it all together, and there's deduplication built into it, stuff like that. So I think it fits a niche that's appropriate for, I mean, not to naysay, but there is a niche there. But certainly rethinking how it works is a good idea.
I wasn't saying that there's no niche. I'm using it myself. I'm the exact use case that you just gave is what I'm doing.
So tell me your ideas for the kinds of ways that we ought to be rethinking it.
Okay, as they emerge, I will. But
Okay.
at the moment, the way that we're looking at the issue, it just seems to me that I just would like to have us also consider not just taking the existing tool and migrating it to some new form, but actually re-examining the question of what we want, so, and in the light of whatever new stuff is around.
Yeah, no, it's a really good idea.
Absolutely. I will make a commitment right here in front of God and everybody to help with this project, okay? But anyway, it's just
Well,
keep an
certainly
open mind.
not just a simple rewrite, you know, go from content A in archetypes to content B in dexterity. That's not what's needed here. What's needed is a total stripping out of the infrastructure that it's built on, and a rewriting of that infrastructure in modern, you know, stuff without a CMF layer, for example. And I don't know the rest of the details technically. That's a perfect opportunity to do that.
It seems like a sprint would be a good use to get something like this up and off the ground and done. So, I mean,
Definitely, yeah.
you could run one of those.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it would be a kind of sprint that it would be really nice to get some sponsors, you know, of the kind of institutions that hold this near and dear to their hearts, so that we could actually, you know, have some funds to bring some key developer types who would be great for the kind of brainstorming you're talking about, as well as know all the best way to redo the internals. And, yeah.
Well, especially when the symposiums are held on an academic institution, you've got access to
Right.
people.
Yeah. So, although it might be a perfect thing for a focus sprint at like some of the sprints that happen that are really targeted at certain topics, and then everybody's like just focused on that one thing. So that could work well too, I think.
I was thinking like at the end of this, we have the sprints going on, so something like, I mean, I'm not saying organize it now.
Yeah.
But, you know, something like that would be, I think, useful to get this done.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, all right. Sally, organize a sprint. That's what we should do about this, I guess. You brought it up. No, I think it's probably, I mean, it goes to the question of how important is Plone, is the academic market to Plone? I think that's kind of a broader question, because it's been a fairly core community, part of our, who we develop for and who we are, and all the, engineering type people that are attracted to this community are, it's kind of that kind of a community. So if it does have that level of importance, then it seems like it's worth kind of recognizing and raising it up to the level of, okay, foundation, we should kind of think about these couple of key, because the same thing is true, I think, for faculty staff directory. That would be an easier rewrite, but it needs a rewrite. Actually, it's exactly the time I was supposed to end, so thank you very much.